Hello everyone and welcome to Who Wore It Better, the weekly segment in which I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. And folks, let's face it, Raw this week was terrible. I love promos. I love a good wrestling promo. I think they can be really good to add some entertainment and add some depth and interest into a story. And I get that right now they're in this position where they have to set up a lot of different storylines going into Royal Rumble and WrestleMania season. And Raw did that in spades. But man, 3 hours of Raw. And I don't know what the official stat was, but everyone seems to be saying 20 minutes of wrestling. And I believe them. Man, how do you screw that up? A 3-hour wrestling program, you can't get more than 20 minutes of wrestling in. Are you kidding me? I don't know what to say. I felt bad as a viewer watching at home, but at least watching on television, I was in the comfort of my own home and I could get up and go to the bathroom and like have a snack or something and just be fine. But man, I feel so bad for the people who were there in attendance, at the Ohio State University, sitting there on their hands, just having to sit there. They paid their hard-earned money. They paid an exorbitant amount of money for those tickets to be entertained. And I can't speak for them, but if I were there, I would not have been entertained being there live. Because if there's no action to punctuate these promos and these stories you're trying to tell, and when half of them are pre-taped and they're, on the screen, it's terrible. I'm not going to talk about the wrestling on Raw tonight for this week's edition of Who Wore It Better, because I'm not going to spend more time talking about the wrestling and focus more on the wrestling than they did. That wouldn't make any sense. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about a couple of the storyline bullet points that interested me for good and for bad, and just go from there. That's going to be my Raw review. So let's just begin. What the hell was McFoley wearing? That was just super bizarre. I love the stuff with Jericho getting caught in the shark cage and going up, but that was just funny stuff. Setting up the match at Royal Rumble between Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns. I don't care about this feud because all the heat is with Owens and Rollins. It's always been. Roman Reigns has no place in this feud, and really, I think it would just be better for everyone if he just focused more on the U.S. title and defending that. I think the fact that he's defended it once so far, was against Jericho a couple of weeks ago, but that didn't even feel like there was any doubt that he was going to lose the belt. So, yeah, it just seems so out of place. All the heat's with Rollins. Sasha Banks coming out later with a crutch and a knee brace. Now, I listened to JD from New York's review on Raw, most of it anyway, last night, and he brought up a good point that I hadn't even thought about before. Considering at Hell in a Cell, the most brutal match in WWE history, no one, let alone Sasha, is selling their injuries, selling the impact of the cell for the night after that. But you've got this 30-minute Iron Man match, and Sasha, she's in a knee brace. Oh, she's got a crutch. I don't know. It just seems so weird that their priorities and what they think is worth selling. They seem to be backwards logic right now. Nia Jax comes out and says that Sasha is weak, and she kicks the crutch out from under her leg, and then she tosses her one time and leaves. I don't get it. If you really want to get heat on Nia Jax, why don't you have her keep beating up Sasha Banks? It maximizes the heat on Nia and makes Sasha look more sympathetic going into their inevitable storyline, their feud going on. So what do you lose by having Nia beat up Sasha more? I know he's kicking someone when they're down, but it works because Sasha is great at being this victim and getting beat up and tossed around and stuff, and Nia Jax is perfect to do the tossing and the beating. So I don't know why they held back on that. The Cruiserweights are coming to Raw. The Cruiserweights are coming to Raw. We're going to give the Cruiserweights a 2-minute match, most of which is obscured by a commercial break. By the way, go watch 205 Live on Tuesdays. The one thing I will say about the Noam Dar and Cedric Alexander match, I love the way Noam Dar says, Alicia Fox. P.S. The Noam Dar, Cedric Alexander, Alicia Fox thing is the same thing that was going on with the Enzo, Lana Rusev thing, only now it makes sense and it feels more right because Noam Dar is clearly the heel in all of this. That's how you book the kind of angle, guys. Big E with the burn of the year, in my opinion, basically saying that in a month's time, Charlotte will have beaten her dad's World Championship record, which I thought was hilarious. By the way, new Raw Tag Team Championship belts presented to Cesaro and Sheamus. I liked that improvement. I hated the copper color scheme with the original tag titles. I liked what they did with the blue and silver for SmackDown, so it only makes sense to have red and silver for Raw. Also, why are Cesaro and Sheamus still fighting? I don't get that. I thought they had their mutual bonding, their moment of respect and understanding moment at the bar a couple weeks ago, but they're still fighting and they're the champions. They've already gotten through all that. How they got past all that. They need the anger management management class, the sensitivity training, not Enzo Amore, which God forbid, I'll get to that later. Neville's back and cuts an amazing promo. I think that's the most microphone time he has ever gotten in his time on the main roster, and he sounded so intense and so angry, and it felt so good. It was one of the better promos of the night because it felt like it was coming from someplace real. The sensitivity training sketches with Enzo, wow, like they were trying to, you could tell they were trying to capture the magic, I think, of those anger management sketches with Daniel Bryan and Kane a few years back, but boy, did not work out here. It's like Enzo coming off so awkward, but not in like a haha funny face way to me. It was just kind of like the new kid in class making a fool of himself and not endearing himself to anybody. Also, why were the other guys in the sensitivity training? Why were Jinder Mahal and Bo Dallas and Darren Young and Bob Backlund? Did they show their dongs to people too in the locker room? I didn't know why they were there. And in the end, Enzo gets beat up by Rusev and Jinder Mahal, who I guess they're going to be a tag team now. I really hope not. That's going to be a huge step down for Rusev. It's more than he's already fallen this year. And they beat up on Enzo because clearly he still hasn't learned his lesson. Why is Enzo still the face in all this? A couple of quick notes regarding the Charlotte-Bayley feud. Where did Dana Brooke disappear off to? I mean, is she injured? I don't really know what her status is. She was there for a while, and then in the most recent revival of the Sasha Charlotte thing around Roadblock and a couple weeks before that, she just disappeared. Like, where'd she go? Like, you can't have all the women appear on Raw on the same episode of Raw at all. Like, you gotta like take people off here and there and bring them back and stuff. So you can't have Nia and Dana Brooke and Bayley and Charlotte and Sasha all on the same show at the same time. Oh, we can't have them. Oh, you have to balance it out. Ugh. Then the promo itself between Charlotte and Bayley, which I actually liked. It was one of the stronger promos that Bayley's had since she's been on the main roster. And again, Charlotte cementing herself as one of like just the most despicable heels. You just want to see her get beat so bad, which is great storytelling in that regard. But Charlotte said a weird thing where it's like, those last 2 times you beat me didn't count, and she never elaborated as to why. One of the things I wish they expanded on Raw, things I liked but I kind of wish they did more of, was Braun Strowman. The fact that he was pissed that he lost to Sami Zayn at Roadblock. I wanted to see him pull a Kane in 1999 and just go ape shit and destroy everything, every segment, just run in and beat ass and just take no prisoners because he was so mad. That should have been the or else. You know, the or else on Raw was him beating up Titus O'Neil and Sin Cara. By the way, I like the new color scheme, Sin Cara. Just beating them up and tossing the Christmas trees around and then beating up Rollins and Reigns at the end of the main event, which is great. I want to see, I'm so sick of seeing the same 4 people in the main event scene on Raw. So please, let's incorporate Braun Strowman, get some new blood into that scene for a minute, please. But yeah, I think Braun invading every segment and just getting pissed and beating everyone up every match, that wouldn't have been any worse than 3 hours of just nonstop promos. I would have taken that, maybe a healthy mix of the two. Make it just wild and crazy again. I don't know. Just make it unpredictable. Now let's move on to SmackDown, which was a breath of fresh air compared to what I saw on Raw on Monday. First of all, the show opens up with the long-awaited AJ Styles and James Ellsworth title match. AJ Styles is the Goldberg to Ellsworth's Brock Lesnar, and the match is over and done with immediately. Thank God. He destroys James Ellsworth. He throws him into the steel ring frame, which you don't see that happen that very often. He gets beat up. Then Dolph Ziggler comes out, cuts a bit of a promo talking about their match next week. Baron Corbin comes in, he calls Dolph Ziggler weak, and he beats him. He basically the same kind of promo that Nia Jax cut on Sasha, now I think about it, and then he lays Dolph Ziggler out with a sucker punch at the end of days, setting up their match later in the night. Intercontinental title match, The Miz defending against Apollo Crews. David Otunga on commentary said that Apollo Crews had a breakout year in 2016. I wouldn't call it a breakout year. It was certainly a year, but I wouldn't call it breakout. The Miz somehow pokes the referee in the eye or brushes him off to the side with his foot during that flip. Then he comes to the skull-crushing finale on Apollo Crews, wins the match, and then he just drops the bomb on Renee Young in that post-match interview. He calls her out for sleeping with Dean Ambrose. He went there, brother, and Renee slaps him. So yeah, that was actually pretty cool. I mean, it kind of took me by surprise. Natalya calls out Nikki Bella to try and talk things out over who attacked Nikki at Survivor Series. Carmella comes out immediately and just basically says, oh, Natalya conspired against you, Nikki, with me. And then Natalya's like, oh, you. And she basically admits, yeah, it was me all along, because I don't like you and you're a bitch and you're never gonna get married, that's great. You know, when the biggest insult a woman can lob against another woman is their ability, their worthiness as a bride. That's great. 2016, everyone. I don't get what the point was of delaying this reveal by a couple of weeks, just saying, oh no, it wasn't me, Nikki. Then all of a sudden at the drop of a hat, it was me, haha, yeah, mustache. I think that they really could have benefited from building this up for a few more weeks. Just have a thing where Natalya finally earns Nikki's trust back and their friends and their partners again. Then, at the appropriate moment, Natalya would turn on Nikki and then reveal why she did it. I think, have stakes to that. Have it mean something when the reveal happens. This seemed very just kind of out of left field for me. Like I said, I would have liked it to be a third party that was neither Natalya or Carmella. But now it turns out it is Natalya, unless Natalya pulled a Rikishi and she did it for somebody else yet to debut. I don't know, I'm reading too much into it. My point is, I wish they didn't pull the trigger on it so soon. Dean Ambrose versus Luke Harper. Not much to say about this match. They fought a lot last year, so this feels kind of like renewal of that. It felt like, good to see them wrestle again after it's been that long apart. The match ends when Ambrose surprise pins Harper with a Mahistral Cradle, but the Wyatts immediately jump and beat him up. They follow the buzzers, they teleport their way out of there, and The Miz shows up, a continuation of what happened earlier in the night between him and Renee Young. The Miz lays out Dean Ambrose. I kind of like where this storyline is going. I'm curious to see how it's going to evolve, especially now that there's this Renee Young involvement. They're kind of like making it more public now that these two are an item. Alexa Bliss versus La Luchadora. I mean, I think we all saw a mile away what was happening here, but it was still, it was predictable, but it was still fun to watch. It was fun to see Becky Lynch kind of change up her moveset ever so slightly that you could kind of almost think if you squinted your eyes and crossed them a little bit to blur your vision, you might actually believe that it was somebody else under that mask. She hits Alexa with the disarm her, so now she's in the head of Alexa Bliss. So yeah, I'm liking where this storyline's going. It's, I think it's getting into that Sasha, Charlotte territory where they're wrestling a lot for the title. I think though that this is, it hasn't gotten there yet. Mojo Rawley versus Chad Hawkins in a match sponsored by Shooter on the USA Network. I am a psychic, folks. Remember a couple weeks ago, I said I kind of wanted to see the idea of Mojo Rawley as a singles guy. Well, now, unfortunately, due to Zack Ryder's injury from last week, that has come true. I'm sorry that I predicted this terrible, terrible future. Now, I mean, seriously though, Mojo looked good here. He beats Hawkins with a sick-looking running forearm into the corner. So good start for Mojo Rawley in his burgeoning singles career on the main roster. I will stop making any kind of predictions about wrestlers going into singles action who are tag team wrestlers anytime soon. Funny moment backstage, James Ellsworth bandaged up to hell and he's just grunting in pain. He can't even say words. I think Ellsworth is funny in these kind of comedy settings or these kind of small dose kind of things. Then all of a sudden he's comforted of all people by Carmella. Like, ooh, intrigue. I wonder where this is going to go. Dolph Ziggler versus Baron Corbin in the main event. Ziggler putting his #1 contendership against AJ Styles on the line against Corbin here. It was the feud that would not die earlier this year after WrestleMania with a finish we've seen time and time again. The match itself was good up until the end when there was the big countout. I hate the Dillinger 10 counts. Please stop doing that. It's super annoying. If you can't see the referee make up the count, I have no idea what number we're on. Don't expect me to try and keep track of that shit. So both guys are counted out. AJ Styles wallops them both with chairs. By the way, I think they were almost laying it on a little too thick, but I liked how the fact that every time the commentators sang the praises and talked about the accomplishments of Baron Corbin, Styles got more and more intimidated and afraid of Corbin. It's very weird to see heels having a respect and kind of a fear of other heels. Usually it's that they work together against the face. And in kind of a weird way, this kind of buries Ziggler too, because it's like, oh, no one cares about Ziggler. He's kind of a loser. And he hasn't been kind of built that way. I don't expect him to win next week. But it was very interesting to see them building Corbin up in such a way at the expense of AJ Styles as well, but in a good way, if that makes any sense. So Daniel Bryan makes a triple threat match for next week. It's going to be Ziggler, Corbin, and Styles for the title, which I feel is the exact same way the No Mercy match between Styles, Cena, and Ambrose was set up. Am I wrong? Folks, you know I'm going to pick SmackDown this week as the show that wore it better. There's no question. And like I said, I always try and find the positives in everything. And like I said, there were a couple moments here and there on Raw that made me laugh or chortle or go, hey, this is actually kind of a cool spot. But no. When you can't even attempt or care to do a decent balance of wrestling and talking in a 3-hour show, I don't know what's going on with that. Why do you expect us to care about your wrestling if you don't care about your wrestling? You know what I'm saying? There was a point on Monday night where my wife and I were watching the show together and she was like, oh, I have to get up and do this chore, but first I'm going to wait until the next match begins. And the next match never came. She waited a half hour and was just talking, and finally she just left. That's how ridiculous it was, how thick they laid on the promos and stuff. And like I said, they got a lot of shit they got to build up for, Royal Rumble WrestleMania season. But did they have to just front load it all so much in this one episode of Raw? You've got a long time. For the first time in forever, we don't have a pay-per-view in 2 weeks. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself in those 2 weeks, but be that as it may, they've got time to build a Royal Rumble. And you didn't have to start all this exposition on this one episode of Raw. And for 3 hours, 90% of it was promos. And 90% of that weren't good promos. I thought it was a waste of a Monday night. And again, I feel so bad for the audience who paid to sit there live. SmackDown mostly wins this week by virtue of not being Raw, but they still had good moments on their own. Again, I like the whole thing going on with Becky Lynch and Alexa Bliss. I loved seeing AJ Styles slaughter James Ellsworth, and I am curious to see, there are some things where I'm like, oh, what's going to happen here? What's going to happen with Ambrose and Miz now that Renee Young is involved? What's going to happen with Ellsworth and Carmella? I'm actually kind of interested. And how ironic is it, 10 years after the Eugene storyline, where at one point there was a different Carmella and trying to hang out with Eugene and turn heel on him. The parallels are just crazy. Anyway, let me know what you thought about Raw and SmackDown in the comments section below, and don't forget to vote in this corner of your screen. I have a feeling I know where the poll results are going to end up this time. But until then, be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. And don't forget, tomorrow, Thursday morning, it's me and Adam Blampier doing a crossover review on Santa's Sleigh, starring the one and only Bill Goldberg, the greatest WCW champion of all time, they say. So I look forward to showing you guys that video then. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.